If you're considering getting divorced, obviously, you know, I can understand that you want to kind of preserve your wealth and preserve the money you've worked so hard to build. Um, you might be thinking the best way to preserve your assets and avoid the pitfalls would be to stay married. If that is something that will work for you and your spouse, great. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just not going to work no matter how much you want it to work, and you're going to have to get divorced. So then the trick is to get divorced in a smart way rather than going through it in a manner that will just destroy you financially. There's different things you can do to try to protect yourself financially. The first thing you need to do is talk to an attorney. A lot of our clients, no matter how much wealth they have, they want to control the situation and do it themselves. While I admire your tenacity, it's not always the best way to go because unfortunately, while you're likely an expert in whatever it is you do, where you have built your own empire, your own company, where you've gone up the ladder at your corporation, it's likely not in the business of divorce law. So unfortunately, you have no idea what you're doing. And if you try to do it yourself, you're not only going to sabotage yourself potentially as far as hitting these financial pitfalls and making mistakes, but you'll likely also be sabotaging any kind of goodwill we could help you rely on that you have with your soon-to-be ex. Because we have found that when clients try to negotiate a deal on their own, you can get a bit emotionally triggered, where it can impact your ability to communicate with your spouse and impact your ability to really see clearly and lucidly and logically figure out who's entitled to what by when. As a divorce attorney, we see your assets in buckets. We're not financially triggered by whether you need to divide one retirement account or whether the money's going to come from the income you're receiving from real estate properties or the income you're receiving as a W-2 employee or a distribution or whatever it is. To us, it's money's on a balance sheet. And maybe those numbers, maybe we're going to be working with a forensic accountant or somebody else to get somebody else involved who is an expert in a specific field. Because as divorce attorneys, we're going to stay in our own lane and we're going to give you divorce advice on exactly what we are qualified to give you advice on, right? Because we're anxious lawyers. We're not going to color outside the lines and try to give you advice on complicated corporate tax strategies. We might be able to tell you who's the best expert to do that. We might be able to give you broad strokes advice. But when it comes to really narrowly tailored, expert seasoned advice, we're those people for divorce law. And we know what we're not those people in. And we're going to steer you to those people. We do have clients that try to do it themselves at the very beginning. They sabotage their relationship with their ex, and then eventually they decide they're going to relinquish control over their divorce. And they only decide this after they realize it's not going to work. And then we can take over and we can try to be your hero and save the day. But you've usually, kind of sabotaged the goodwill where then things may be required that wouldn't have been required. Maybe we have to go to court to get your ex to do something reasonable because, you've triggered him or her in a way where they're now unwilling to do the reasonable thing. Maybe you have been a bit stingy in what you were willing to give because you didn't mean to be stingy. You just didn't know what the law required you to give. So you've set this poor track record for yourself where now your ex has filed something with the court. And now we have to go to court and try to rehabilitate your character so you don't, look like not so great for the judge, because you need to remember that family court is a very subjective place to be. And if you have a high asset, complex asset divorce, it's not necessarily the place you want to be. In fact, we do our very best to steer our clients away from the family court. And that doesn't mean that we're going to just settle your case on whatever terms your ex wants. Oftentimes, that means taking your case to a private judge, escalating your case to the right mediator. All mediators are not created equally. A lot of people can be mediators. You don't need to be an attorney to be a mediator. So it's finding that seasoned, usually retired attorney or retired judge kind of mediator that's really going to get these complex financial issues and understand them and not judge you. Sometimes in the public court, it might not go your way because these judges are great judges, but they are used to seeing, these worst case scenarios of, these people that can barely afford to put a roof over their head and the kind of situations they're dealing with. So then when your issue comes up in front of the judge where, your spouse is receiving $15,000 a month from you in spousal support, and your spouse wants to be receiving $40,000 a month in spousal support, and you think it should be a bit lower, you might feel like your spouse is being entitled and unrealistic and all these other things. But when spousal support is calculated, if it's calculated, with the specific software program, the court's going to use, the number is that number. And if that number is too far away from what you're willing to give, it might not be an issue that you really want in front of a public judge. A private judge or a mediator might help kind of massage the issue and add in other kinds of issues or case law or their experience dealing with, situations very similar to yours. And it's going to really help us be able to make a deal. And it's going to help us involve your spouse's attorney. And having your spouse have an attorney might feel uncomfortable for you because you want to be in control and just have your spouse sign off on something. And maybe that will work for you. We have to really meet and talk to you about your situation. But usually we have the best luck if, your spouse hires a really good attorney. You might think that's a terrible idea, but it's pretty great because if your spouse hires a really experienced, reputable family law attorney, we have a very high chance of being able to negotiate a settlement because each party is going to have an attorney telling them the applicable family law, telling them with their, decades of experience what exactly a judge could be likely to do to help you both kind of get inside that box of what's reasonable and figure this out together, or to have you both saying yes to hiring the right expert to figure this out together. If you own a business, it's possible we can reach agreements as to how your divorce should go just by agreement, and maybe your spouse is going to waive his or her right to a business valuation, but more likely or not, we're going to have one. So it's finding that right forensic accountant to do it. If you really want to do this on your own, I'm not going to be the one to talk you out of it. You're going to do it. But, and I hope it goes well for you. But I would strongly recommend you don't do that. And instead you hire the right team, the right capable, experienced team that's going to guide you. The best divorce settlement, it's probably not going to feel fantastic. It's going to hurt a little bit, but you're going to know what it's based upon. And you're going to have that peace of mind that you have someone in your corner taking care of you that's not missing any detail, that you don't have to micromanage, that's going to take this out from under you, take care of it for you, so you don't have to be emotionally triggered and deal with this stuff. You can focus on your family and your work and the stuff that matters most to you. You can take this off your hands so you can really, get the closure you need financially and emotionally and really move on with your life. If you're thinking about getting divorced and you're worried about what's going to happen to the money that you're going to inherit, let me tell you a little bit about that. So if it's money you're going to inherit in the future and you're still married, you should know that that's going to be your separate property. I mean, whether you're married or not. But I know if you're still married, you're probably worried about if, whoever it is, if your loved one passes away while you're still married, maybe you should get divorced sooner or something like that. And no, that's going to be your separate property. You just need to keep it in a different account. It needs to be earmarked into its separate account so you're not commingling it with a community property asset. So there's just no question that it's yours. Don't invest it in something with your spouse. Just keep it completely separate. If you're worried about money that you already inherited during your marriage, I hope that it's completely separate. As long as it's earmarked as your separate property in its own account where we can trace it and find that, this is separate, we'll be able to make sure that remains yours. We're able to negotiate your divorce where you and your spouse sign an uncontested divorce agreement and we don't have to go to court. It'll be your separate property. Even if your spouse won't agree to something where we end up going to court on some issue, whatever it might be, that's not an issue that's going to be escalated to a judge. And if it is, that's ridiculous because it's your separate property. It's not a gray area. It's black and white. So rest assured that as long as it's been earmarked and separated from the rest of your money, that's something you're going to get as part of your divorce. It's not something you're going to have to worry about. If you have a more sophisticated divorce with complex assets, please reach out to Fenchel Family Law. You can schedule a free case evaluation with our intake specialist, and she'll talk you through your circumstances and make sure we're the right fit for you and schedule you with the right experienced family law attorney to really help you out.